Hi, a very good evening, one and all. Thank you for logging in on time. Welcome to our webinar titled Apparently Guiding Our Young Through Sexuality in Today's Digital World. So, my name is Darius Lee. I'm the Executive Director of Cultivate SG, and Grander Together is an initiative of Cultivate SG. A little bit about Apparently. Apparently is a series of panel discussions between people across generations, bringing their professional or personal perspectives to help strengthen intergenerational families. This particular session of Apparently is brought to you by Grander Together, which is, as I mentioned, an initiative of Cultivate SG. Grander Together aims to cultivate stronger intergenerational families in Singapore. We are grateful for the partnership of Indigo and Co as well as Village Consultancy. And we are also grateful for the support of Mums for Life, Dads for Life, as well as SG Families for today. Let me introduce our panelists. Our speakers are the following: Carol Loy, who is the founder of Village Consultancy. Carol is a certified digital wellness educator and a mental toughness coach. She is the founder of Village Consultancy, a social enterprise providing digital wellness education, mental toughness coaching, and leadership and communication training to children, youth, parents, grandparents, and educators. She holds an MBA, Technology and Human Capital Management from Nanyang Technological University. Our other speaker is Mr. Raphael Zhang. He is an assistant senior counselor at Indigo and Co. Raphael is a registered professional counselor at Indigo and Co., an organization providing professional mental health services, training, and consultancy in gender and sexuality. In his previous organization, he worked in family life education with a focus on sexuality education. He is registered with the Singapore Association for Counseling. Now, of course, today's topic is going to be an interesting one. It is also a sensitive one because navigating sexuality in today's world is both sensitive and vital, especially with easy access to online pornography. What are some practical ways that parents and grandparents can work together to support young people in developing a healthy and holistic view of sexuality? How can your family build stronger trust and more open communication at home? So without further ado, I'd like to hand the time over to Raphael from Indigo and Co. to start us off with an important presentation on this topic. Raphael, please.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm just gonna share my slides. So today I'm just gonna do a quick sharing, and then we'll have a lot more fun during Q&A. I titled today my segment "Cultivating Sexuality Education Conversations in Our Family," and of course, because this is an intergen type of conversation, our family would mean both our family of origin as well as the family that we have formed, wherever it applies. Darius has already mentioned and introduced Indigo and Co. So we're in the gender and sexuality space, doing training, education, and providing mental health consultations. We're on social media if you want to give us a follow. We're on Instagram and TikTok. Now today, I hope to ambitiously and briefly cover three things. Why do we need to talk to our children and grandchildren about sexuality? What are some helpful practices we can consider? And what is our intergenerational role and impact? And I just want to say, preface this by saying that I'm going to speak from a few contexts in my life. I'm going to speak from my context, first and foremost, actually, as a parent of three kids. So, very much I'm still training in this area and gaining experience, as well as my context and my training in my background training in professional counseling. And some of this is just kind of like learning from my clients as well, listening to their stories as to why this particular topic is so important. Josh McDowell, Josh McDowell is a speaker, writer, and he has done a lot of research on pornography. 2019, I remember I attended a conference in which he was a keynote speaker, and he actually said this thing that was so memorable that I have remembered to this day. 2019 to now is like seven years, yes. So Josh McDowell says this. He says often parents come to him and parents are like, oh, do we need to talk to our children about sex, about sexuality? What if we expose them too much? What if, actually they're very innocent? Why do we have to do this? To which Dr. Josh McDowell actually says this. He says it is often not a matter of too much too soon, which is the concern of many parents, but in our culture today, it is often a matter of too little, too late. And I think the concern here is that often pornography or unwanted sexual material has been encountered by our children before parents even talk to them about sexuality. And then that's like their first imprint. And then that leaves a very deep impression. And then whatever conversations afterwards kind of have to compare back to that first encounter that kids have with that. And he also says this about pornography. He says it is not a matter of if our children encounters pornography, it is a matter of when they do. From 2019 until now, the ways pornography is being produced has significantly increased. There was a time when people looked at porn and they mainly look at porn consumption. With the rise of technology and social media, people are not just consumers, but people are also producers of porn. If you think about sites like OnlyFans, and now if you think about AI and the way that AI can generate pornography is really quite significant, the kind of impact it has. So we have a responsibility to prepare our children, our grandchildren for this type of world that they are going to grow up in. And personally, I'm quite concerned for my kids now. I mean, in my time, it was already digital, but in my parents' time, it was like, what do they call it? Cassette tape, right? And then you got to go to like the physical store and like flip through magazines, and then that made porn a lot less accessible. And then in my time, it was the internet. In my children's time, I'm not surprised, and I'm not predicting that one day there will be like holograms or whatever is possible now. And speaking as a counselor, and I'm going to speak a little bit more firmly, in my work, I deal with a lot of different kinds of difficult experiences. There is what we call abuse, which is children receiving what they should not receive, negative things that they should not receive. And there is also what we call neglect, which is children not receiving the good things that they should receive. And both are equally impactful. I would say that when we do not talk to our children about sexuality, and we leave them to fend for themselves, to figure things out for themselves, it is a type of neglect. It is, in my book, equivalent to not teaching them how to discern, not giving them the proper equipment to grow up in a society that has a lot of different challenges. It is a type of neglect. And the impact is far reaching when children have to fend for themselves and they turn to all sorts of untrustworthy sources to learn about sexuality. So we do have a responsibility. What are some helpful practices for sexuality education? So this is not going to be super in depth, but I just want to share some of the common principles that I've encountered. I love my alliterations, so three A's and three O's. We want to be active, we want to be proactive, preemptive, and not just reactive. Is there a place for reactive conversations? Yes. Say our children come and speak to us and bring us a question, we have to be able to respond. And often we want to be on the proactive front. We want to initiate conversations and prepare them. We want to make sure that these conversations are ongoing and not one and done, right? So this is not like a put your child into the room and have this very awkward 2-hour conversation about the birds and the bees. Okay, by the way, please don't do that. That is incredibly awkward and yeah, it's a lot natural and organic. And if you're just gonna weave that into the everyday life, we want to be age appropriate to our grandchild's developmental stage and maturity level. Right, so we want to speak to them at the level that they can understand, at the level of exposure that is appropriate to what they are ready for. We want to be overlaying concepts over time. So as scaffolding and spiraling are educational pedagogical terms, scaffolding is the idea that as they grow older, as you kind of introduce more concepts, you are also kind of like reducing the support. Because as our children age, our grandchildren age, we become less directive, we are more guiding. Right. So from maybe when they're younger, you cannot touch this area of your brother's body. This is your part of the body that is safe to touch. No one else can touch this. Very directive. To when they're teenagers, they're older, we're leading them into. So what do you think about this this value in this relationship? What might you be thinking about in terms of a future partner? More guiding. Spiraling would be the concept of kind of returning back to the similar concept and then building and building and building. So for instance, Carol probably will mention this, but Sexuality education is not only about intercourse or what does sexual intercourse look like, right? It can be you're bathing your infant child, as I do, and you're like, hey, your body is good, these are your arms, these are your thighs, this is your penis, this is your scrotum, and using very neutral language to talk to them about their bodies. I won't deep dive into this. Eric Erickson's psychosocial development kind of looks at what are the different developmental needs across ages. So, say in infancy, you want to be paying attention to their like learning needs of trust and distrust. Can parents be trusted in this stage of life? And then when they grow older, say adolescence, relationships become more important. So before they reach adolescence, we already have to start conversations on identity, what kind of family values guide your identity, and what kind of relationships you might want to have before they enter the stage now. So being preemptive. Another model that we might want to use is Jean Piaget's cognitive developmental model. When they're younger, we use more concrete methods of teaching, right? And then when they're a little bit older, but not yet able to understand abstract concepts, we are not going to use very abstract concepts to explain things to them. We're still going to keep things a little bit more concrete. And then as they grow older, we can talk about using more metaphors and whatever in our conversational techniques. We want to be accurate using factual terms instead of slang words or code words, as many of you must be aware by now about the different words we have given to our genitals. So please use the accurate scientific language. We want to be opportunistic, seizing teachable moments wherever possible, right? So that might look like you're driving down the street and then you see a poster, and then that might generate conversations, or there's a movie coming out that might have certain scenes, that might be a dinner table conversation. But above and beyond all these different concepts, what I really want to kind of bring your attention to is we have to be approachable and askable. We have to have built a relationship in which our children, our grandchildren feel safe to come to us with their questions or with their concerns. And we want to be open and appropriately vulnerable with our own stories and lessons learned, because that really is the best way that children learn. Not just like a top down, this is what you must do, right? But learning through like when I was younger, I encountered this, this is what had happened, this was my challenge, this is my lesson. Children learn. My kids are very interested when I take this approach. When I take the you must do this, that I can see them glaze over. But when I said, oh, in my life at this thing, they're like, they have this white eye thing. Of course, you want to be appropriately vulnerable. Yeah. So being approachable and askable, some questions that I'd like to invite us to think about. How does our child or grandchild experience us as a grandparent or parent? How do they see us? Are we, in some families, the good cop, bad cop, right? Or do they experience us as someone who's safe, that they can bring their questions to? Can they come to us if anything happens to them that brings them fear, shame, and or confusion? And notice I have worded it quite generally. It might not even pertain to sexuality per se, but if they had previously come to us that things that they were afraid of, what is our response to them? Right? Say you have young kids and there was like lightning and thunder, and they're like, and they come to you crying, and to you you're an adult, you're not scared, right? And if your response had traditionally or consistently been, yeah, thunder only lah, scared for what? Boys don't cry, right? If you consistently do this, I think it's very hard for us to imagine if one day something happens to them in the sexuality realm, would they then come to us? Chances are they probably will not. What is our family's approach to disclose or discovered mistakes? When our children come to us to confess something that they had done, what do we do with that? How can you do this? I'm gonna cane you, right? Or we get them to admit something, I won't be angry one, I won't be angry. But then when they finally say the words and you're like, what did you do? Then they're going to be very scared, right? They are then less likely to come to us if they have any sexuality concerns. Right. Sometimes in certain families they practice this thing called like a immunity card. So they have this like if you have something you're afraid to tell me, please bring this card to me. This is to remind me that I will not get angry. So you receive this card, then of course you swallow, you like gulp first, then like self-regulate. I'm gonna brace myself that this card is now here, and then your child kind of tells you that concern. That's some of the technique people have used. I will deep dive into this, but what are our family's roles, spoken or unspoken rules, and what are our family secrets? Is there a golden child in the family that is often put on a pedestal, a lot of high expectations must perform? This child may feel a lot of pressure to not bring their own struggles to you. Is there a scapegoat in the family? Everything happens, it's always this child's fault. This child may often get blamed, this child may also not bring their concerns to you, right? The rules and secrets we can go more into in Q&A time, but things like, is there like a weird uncle we don't ever talk about, even though everybody know, right? And then maybe this is like an uncle with a different type of sexual orientation and nobody speaks about it and nobody invites in the family gatherings. If then the child might have sexuality concerns, this person might think about this particular relative and like, yeah, everyone ostracizes him. I think I better don't bring my concern. All of these things have an impact on our sexuality conversations. As regards to openness, what is our own relationship to our own sexuality, our own sexual stories, and all of us have them, and our own sexual mistakes? Because the way we treat our own sexuality is the way that would likely translate to how we treat our grandchildren, our children's sexuality concerns. What is our approach to the parts of us or the parts of our story that we feel uncomfortable with? Do we bring a lot of shaming or silencing techniques to these parts of our own story? Because if we do that for us, we are more likely to do that for our kids. How much curiosity and compassion do we bring to these parts of us? That will impact how much curiosity and compassion and concern we can bring to our children. And so, what is then our intergenerational role and impact? Again, we can't deep dive, but some simple principles. Healthy boundaries and closeness are essential to sexuality education and formation. There is such a thing as too close. In counseling, we call that enmeshed relationships. Or when parents find it very hard to let go, children are not differentiated, they don't become healthy individuals. That's too much closeness. Of course, you don't want to be too distant. And so you do need to find that healthy balance of boundaries and closeness. And that is very essential to these type of conversations, as well as the formation of a person's sexual identity. We want to honor the child's primary caregivers and their approaches. Um, Funny story, my mom to this day, she when she sees my kids, like, sometimes we're changing them, that like without their shorts or what. Like, I mean, my kids are still young, by the way. These are not teenager kids, okay? I'm talking about living room, we're changing their diapers, okay? These are young kids. And then sometimes my mom still have this habit of like, ayo, shame, 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 see your and then it's just like the naked butt, And sometimes I have to, in private, then talk to my kids about like, hey, there's actually really nothing shameful about your body. I mean, we identify as Christians, so we talk about God has made your body good, and there's nothing to be ashamed about. Yeah. So we do want to kind of, we want to. I mean, I hope my parents, when they have the conversation with them, they will honor our approach, lah. In terms of talking about bodies. We want to get on the same page, parents and grandparents, as to who is playing what role in guiding the child. Maybe for the grandparent, it might be reading certain books, it might be having certain types of conversations, and then we reserve other types of conversations for the parents to have. Sometimes when parents approach the topic and grandparents approach it, we might have differences, like the one I mentioned, and sometimes that can bring up old wounds of issues for us again. That could be an invitation for us to think about how can we heal that relationship between the parent and the grandparent. We can do more of that in Q&A, but I just want to briefly mention that. And just to wrap up, this is a quote I really like from Richard Raw. If we do not transform our pain, we will most assuredly transmit it. And so what I'd like to leave you with today is our intergenerational impact. Whatever we do not transform in our own story, we are likely to pass on. We are going to transmit to the next generation. Whatever we do not process, we're going to bring down the line. But do not despair. Course correction and cycle breaking are never too late. You can always start today. Right after you attend, this talk, Carol's wonderful message, you can be empowered and go forth and do whatever you need to do. Start small. And I think we really want to bear in mind that we are in here because we care for the next generation, whether it's an adult child or like, kids, their kids. Cycle breaking can bear multi-generational fruit. An ancient text says, goodness can visit for 1,000 generations. We want to have multi-generational fruit so that our new ceiling, when we do that work in our own life, we can raise the next generation's floor to better prepare them and empower them for the culture and the age that they are in. And so that they can be sexually literate and sexually intelligent. Yeah, so that's all I have. We'll have a much more exciting time at Q&A, and I'll hand the time back to Darius.
Hey, thank you, Rafael. Thank you for the great sharing. I think a lot of great insights there, and I'm sure you have a lot of burning questions, I think, for a lot of our participants. Now, just a quick reminder, if you look at the bottom of the screen on your Zoom platform, you can see a tab called Q&A, and I see that there's already one question in there. So if you have any questions as our presenters are speaking, please feel free to go to the bottom of your screen, click the Q&A tab, and feel free to type your questions in there during the Q&A segment. We will be happy to answer them. So without further ado, let me hand the time over to Carol, who will share with us a little bit more about sexuality education. Carol, please.
Thank you so much, Darius, and thank you, Raphael, for giving us such a wonderful foundation. Sorry, let me just go back. Sorry. Let me just go back to start from so my name is Carol, and I do a lot of work in terms of helping families, whether is it children, young people, parents, and grandparents, understand the importance of the complexities of our times and how it impacts child development. So I want to start the conversation following from Raphael's wonderful framework and foundation to give us a more in-depth understanding of why there's an urgency for us to talk about sexuality education with our children. My children are young adults now. They are 24 and 21. Both of them study media, and we have had a journey of dealing with inappropriate content. And I have seen firsthand how it impacts me as a mom, how it impacts my daughters. I have got two girls. So this slide is to first understand how our brain grows. Very often we just take it as, the children will grow up and then everybody is doing something and therefore it's okay. But I would invite us to take a step back. Let's understand how our body works, how our children's body grows, especially the brain. The brain is a very important organ. What you see here on this slide are brain scans. The bluish and purplish part of the brain are the parts that develops faster, are more mature. And it's very interesting that even though the brain is already there when the children are born as babies, the brain matures at different rates. Different parts of the brain does different things. By the time the children are 15, the part of the brain that is very well developed is the middle part of the brain, which is responsible for feelings, emotions. So they feel happy, sad, that part of the brain have to process that. That part of the feelings, emotions, is meant to be balanced with the reasoning, the rational part of it. The name they call it is the prefrontal cortex that's responsible for what is called executive functions like setting goals, paying attention, understanding consequences, and having self-control. That part of the brain is not fully developed until mid-20s. And there are some research that says maybe even extend into 30s. Now, why am I starting to talk about this? Because when we can appreciate that regardless of race, language, or religion, the human brain grows in this manner. It takes time. And so during the 10 to 15 year age, right? And if we know that their brain is craving for experiences, emotions, and then we layer in, a lot of media consumptions, and if we are not careful with what they are consuming, it actually forms certain things that they think is true, good, and beautiful in terms of how they see themselves as their identity and also how they relate to other people. So I want to put this as a foundation of why we are discussing it so that we can appreciate that we need to have a developmentally approach. Just now, Raphael talked about how we need to be developmentally appropriate. So appreciating this timeline help us to then better understand, okay, why is it at a younger age we need to have more protection? So for us as some of us here who are grandparents, okay, maybe we are not as exposed to the reality of what our grandchildren are experiencing. The reality is that there are a lot of things on the internet that is that may not be of your family values, and it might give them ideas that might be not healthy for them. And so you see all these are different social media platforms. Okay, every social media platform have got a minimum age requirement. Okay, the reality is that actually a lot of families don't quite honor that. I'm not sure about your family. Okay, so you should do an audit in your family, right? But around the world, there is now a realization because now there is research coming out to say that, hey, social media has been around for the past 15, 20 years. Are our young people doing well? The studies that are coming out around the world, including Singapore, okay, it's that actually our young people are not doing well. Their mental health is not well. So in fact, you see that in Australia, they have started to stop the tech companies from touching their young people 16 and below. And on the chart on the right, you see that countries in different parts of the world, they are also doing that. But in Singapore, I think it's unlikely. I think in Singapore, the stance they would give is there is enough legislation that they are putting in. Is up to families for us to set the appropriate boundaries. Okay. And so the QR codes are there. Feel free to take a picture. You can read this. It is very interesting. Okay. On the left, when you see Australia, there are certain social media that is specifically banned, but yet there are some that are specifically exempt. Okay. It's very interesting that WhatsApp is exempt. But if you think about it, WhatsApp is also like social media now already, right? You can post updates, you can create channels, anybody can share anything. So once it's user generated, you have to be very careful because now, just now Raphael talked about, inappropriate content. Nowadays, the inappropriate content could be self-generated because there is a trend, that people would send intimate pictures or videos to other people. Sometimes it could be their boyfriend or girlfriend. And then when they break up, they may not be able to get those content back. Even with generative AI, there is a minimum age requirement. I'm just putting it here. This is not an AI session, but just to say that there is also minimum age requirement. The concern about generative AI tools is that these are also values forming. Okay, it shapes the way our children will view realities of the world when they search things out, when they can create stuff. And so this is something that we want to be mindful of as well. This is actually an article that highlights, there are more and more young people who are arrested for sexual crimes. Why? In most cases, okay, the second paragraph, the victims actually know the culprits. So it's no longer strangers. Don't open door to strangers. Nowadays, it's about, people whom our young people know. But if they are not aware of what are some of the dangers, who can they trust, and what they should do, sometimes they might fall into very unfortunate circumstances. Okay, and the Ministry of Home Affairs says that, early and repeated exposure to pornography may affect young people's understanding of healthy relationships, while inappropriate and inaccurate information may lead to distorted perception about sexual activities. I am just highlighting this to say that there is an urgency for us to talk about this because the reality is it's not just something that's happening in other parts of the world, it is happening in our own backyard, in our own country. So what are some handles? How do we even start to talk about it? Okay, this is a very useful article from an organization called Defend Young Minds. So you can search up Defend Young Minds. They have got really useful guides and curriculum, which are used to teach children 9 to 12 about screen time, pornography, refusal skills, and so on. This particular article gives really more practical handles. When we say we need to have developmentally appropriate ways to talk to our children, what exactly does that look like? So if I could give a quick summary, essentially different stages of a child's growth, they need different things for their sexual development. So for the early 0 to 2, for example, we give the correct names, like what Raphael was saying. Teach them all the things that are true, good, and beautiful about the body. Even before we talk to them about pornography, we should be telling them the beauty of our body, how amazing our body is created, how amazing daddy and mommy's body, how amazing your body is, or your sibling's body is. Okay, when they are slightly older, 3 to 5, we teach them about body safety. We can teach them to talk about what are private parts. Already at that age, we can teach them, the parts of the body that we cover under our swimsuit when we go to the pool, when we go to the beach. Those parts are called our private parts. Okay, it's not that we are ashamed of them. It's just that those parts are private parts. That means we don't allow people to touch our private parts. We don't touch other people's private parts. If people touch our private parts, it could be a doctor, but then daddy and mommy should be with you, and we don't take picture of other people's private parts or don't take picture of our private parts. Unfortunately, I do hear some families to say that, their kids nowadays, they have access to phones very early, right? They start to use their phones, take picture. And sometimes some of the kids will take pictures of siblings' naked body parts and they think that is funny. So we need to teach them also from young that we want to honor. There are certain boundaries, okay? And we honor boundaries as well. When they are slightly older, 6 to 8, we can already start to talk to them about good pictures and bad pictures, like pornography. Okay, we teach them that certain pictures of people's private parts, focus on the private parts of the body, those are not good for our brain. Okay, so Defend Young Minds as an organization, they have a curriculum that teaches 9 to 12-year-olds on that. And at 9 to 12-year-old, this is a very important period because some of the girls, they will already start to hit puberty. Okay, and they start to feel maybe uncomfortable with their body, start to have pimples, start to be moody. And so maybe parents or grandparents say you might start to feel like, hey, your child is starting to be different. Okay, they start to feel a little bit more stressed also. They because of PSLE and so on, right? Or even from P4 to P5 is a big jump also. And once they are stressed, right, they might start to, use their devices a little bit more, or they might start to ask for devices more because maybe now the school requires them to use devices a little bit more. Okay, and so this is a time that is really important for us to discuss sexuality also, rather than just wait until after PSLE then talk. Really, I discourage us to, like, everything must be academic focus. We don't talk about this kind of thing until after September. I would say that we just now what Raphael said in terms of like open conversation slowly, not just a once-off conversation. It can start really just as normal everyday family life. Okay, and not just wait until after PSLE, because these things are important also as the children grow up. When they feel something bothers them about their body, why am I feeling this way? So discussing about what puberty is, what to expect, how was your own experience? Just now Raphael said that our own stories matter. So sometimes I would tell my girls, when I was growing up, I feel uncomfortable also because I am not like other girls. I don't talk like other girls. My voice is a little bit low, and sometimes I feel a little bit more uncomfortable. I'm more hairy with other girls. How do I feel about it? And I process it with them because they will feel a little bit odd as they grow up. Okay, and so at that age, it's useful to talk about puberty and also uh, yeah. I don't have time to go through in that, but the idea is that there is a developmental appropriateness at each stage. When they are teenagers, okay, this is where we want to talk even more about boundaries, okay, about how to take care of themselves, and even as they go into relationship, what is the purpose of dating? Okay, what is the purpose? What is marriage like? These things may not be covered by the curriculum, and I would share with you a bit where you can find information. Where do you even start the conversation? Now that you know that there is a window of opportunity, this is where I would encourage you to check out what your child or your grandchild's school is teaching your child or your grandchild. This is public information. You just have to go to your browser, search your child's school, because this information, oh no, you can go to Ministry of Education, you put in and sexuality education. Okay, then you will get to the MOE page first. What I want to highlight is this, okay? When you get to the sexuality education page, if you scroll all the way to the bottom, okay, the first page where you see it, I want to start from the bottom because it tells us what is MOE's position in terms of what parents and by extension grandparents need to do, okay? From their perspective, parents, okay, play the primary role in our children's sexuality education. Okay, it's not the school, it's us parents, no matter where they get their information from. Okay, whether is it the internet, whether is it their friends, whether is it from the school, parents are the best person to teach them what is right and wrong. Okay, so it's not the school, it's us parents. Okay, and so that is MOE's stance. And they would say that, if we have questions, we can ask our children's school. Okay, you can ask through the form teacher and so on. And then we need to complement what our children learn in school. Okay, by initiating and talking about sexuality issues and so on. So actually, there's a lot of things that we need to do as parents and grandparents by extension, now that grandparents know, right? And if you want to know specifically what is taught in your child's school, okay, actually, you can do a search. Type in your child's school name, you put an N sign, and then put in sexuality education. It will usually give you a more detail about what is being taught when. Okay, what is the basis? Okay, what kind of values? I get a lot of questions about. So what values? Okay, and so there are 6 guiding principles that MOE has. Again, the first one is parents play the primary role in educating our children and are responsible for teaching and transmitting positive values on sex and sexuality. Because if we don't do it, actually social media can do it, our friends can do it, now generative AI can do it. So we really need to transmit our values. How do we transmit our values? maybe through everyday life that we have, family life, that we spend time with them. Okay. The third point is quite interesting. Okay. It says that the curriculum is aligned with our national mainstream values of encouraging heterosexual married couples to have healthy relationship. That means married couples who are male and female coming together to form a healthy marriage. And then when a child comes forth, the child will have a stable nuclear family unit. Okay. And if there are unfortunate things that happen, maybe divorce or death of daddy or mommy, then there is extended family support for this precious young life. So these are things that MOE uses as a basis to teach our children. If you go to any school's website, okay, you would be able to see details of what is being taught, not the lesson plan itself, but the curriculum. Okay, so but I would encourage you to take a look at it. Okay, usually the school will also tell you when this lesson will take place. Is it term 1, is it term 2, or term 3? But I would encourage you to think about, actually how much time is set aside to talk about this and what do they talk about. So for example, at primary 5, okay, at primary 5, they talk about physical changes, and then they do talk about pornography at primary 5. Okay, at primary 5 also is when the children learn about reproductive system. And so there are a lot of things that goes on in P5. So maybe if you look at it and then you have to decide, right, for my child or my grandchild, is my child or grandchild already exposed to some of these things? I might need to talk about it earlier, for example. But if you don't know where to start, at least looking at how the school is teaching your child, it will give you like a basis to get the first conversation starting. And roughly you know when the school is going to approach it, then you can decide, do I want to talk about it earlier first or only when it's covered. Actually, MOE also allows you to opt out of sexuality education at any point in the year. Okay, maybe at the start of the year you have already signed consent and whatever, but if at any point in time you feel uncomfortable, you can always go to your school and then opt out. But once you opt out, then you have to decide, how do you fill in the gap. Okay, there are resources out there as well. So I'm just going to skim through, because at every level, all the way to secondary school, I skim through this. Even so at Sec 3, okay, at Sec 3, that's where they are going to learn about how to avoid sexually transmitted diseases. Okay, but even when this program is taught by the new communicable disease agency, okay, and it's done through video. And then after that, they will go to class and then it will unpack it. Even when they are teaching sexually transmitted diseases, according to the curriculum, abstinence and upholding family values are still the key messages. Okay, so this is taught at 15, when the children are 15. If you think that my child needs to know that earlier, then that's where, at least now you know that at the national level, they teach it at Sec 3. And then maybe some of you might think that I think my child need to know it earlier. Then it's up to you, okay? So at JC1, JC2, there are also curriculum as well. Okay, Focus on the Family Singapore has a really good suite of videos and it's complimentary. So if you scan the QR code, you would be able to have access to this as a suite of videos plus discussion points that are really good for 7 to 12 years old. Okay, and so if you're looking for resources, you're not very sure what to do, at least now there is practical handles for you to give it a go. I talk about porn in much more deeper way through discussing documentaries. So I use documentary for us to appreciate actually what is the true impact on our brain, okay, on our relationship. The one on the right is actually the curriculum by Defend Young Minds that I was talking about earlier. I run this every 2 months. And so there's a opportunity also during the June holidays for that. So I think that's the end of my slide, to give you something more practical, more in-depth, and there's an urgency on why we really need to work on this with our family. Yeah, over to you, Darius.
Thank you so much, Carol, for the very, very insightful sharing. Now, we'll go on to a time of Q&A, and I see that people have been asking questions. So let me start with the very first question, and perhaps this I'll pose to Raphael. If my child is addicted to pornography, what should I do?
Well, first thought is bring your child to see us. It's one of the areas that we do help people with. But I think as a caregiver, we do want to approach it with as little shame as possible, with a lot of curiosity, compassion. Um, I mean, just very quickly, I think in my experience of seeing clients with pornography addiction, when they are younger, it can start out more with curiosity. But then I think with repeated turning to it for coping, it then becomes like the meaning attached to it is when I face this difficult thing, when I have this uncomfortable thing in my body, this feeling, I would then repeatedly turn to this in order to cope. And that's what addiction really is. And so we do want the person to cope in a different way that is healthier, more adaptive. But we also want to get curious about what are they trying to cope with? What function does pornography fulfill? Is it stress relief? Um, is it a sense of a break? Is it, sometimes kids are just, I mean, Carol talked about this, right? Before the stress all starts to pile up. Kids have coped with studies with pornography before. Yeah, so I think we do want to just get curious about them. That's a start.
Hmm. Okay, Carol, any thoughts on this question?
Sorry. Yeah, actually, I've put in uh, a link, okay, to the Defend Young Minds website. So they have got good resources in terms of how to deal with pornography. This website is really good for those 12 and below. Otherwise, there is another really good one called Fight the New Drug. Okay, I don't dare to go and click the link anymore because just now I was locked out. I was bummed out. But that is one that is really good for young people. Okay, that is called Fight the New Drug. They have got really short videos for you to start to talk about it first. Actually, the word addiction, I would be very cautious, right? Because addiction is actually a very important, very strong word. Okay, addiction usually should be properly diagnosed. So just because they have access to pornography, they may not be addicted, so to speak. Okay, so it's good as what Raphael said. Maybe you as a parent or grandparent have a chat with the professional first, and then later on figure out how best to help the young person. So there are resources online as a start to use something that's objective to talk to the child first. Hey, actually it's really not good for the brain. What do you think about it? Depending on the age of your child, of course. Does that make sense? Is that okay? Yeah. So there are resources out there before we just get so worried that they are addicted. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Next question, I think I'll pose it to Carol. How do I approach the topic? I believe it's the topic of sexuality education with the kids 12 and 14.
So as a start, I think what I was sharing just now in terms of understanding what your child will be taught. So the first thing I would do is go and search up my child, your 12-year-old, for example, right? Go and search for the school name. Okay, even as I talk now, you can try it. Okay, go to your browser, put your child's school, you put an N sign, and you put sexuality education. Okay, you should be able to scroll to a place where they would tell you P6s, what is being taught. Okay, and then there will usually be also a time frame. Then then you take a look at, is that something that you want to talk about it first? I would usually want to talk about it first before my children hear it in school. This is the only subject, so to speak, that I would teach beforehand. The rest of the math science, I would not teach too early, right? I want them to learn in school. But because sexuality education is deeply personal and is values based, and the reality is actually it's very difficult for a teacher with 40 children of diverse exposure and experiences and values to be able to teach it maybe deep enough for the children. So as what MOE is saying, right, parents, it's important for us to do it. So I would first and foremost go and find out what our children's school is using to teach and use that as a basis. And then there are other resources also for 12-year-old, for example, just now Focus on the Family Singapore has got a good video. So you can use that, watch it together, maybe during the upcoming June holidays. and use that to lead into conversation. And then maybe your 12, 14-year-old also, you can also start to either, you can also watch it together, or you can then have a separate conversation on a similar thing. You know, the issue of pornography can be repeated as the children get older. You know, it's not like you talk about it at P6 and then you don't have to talk about it anymore. Some of the things you need to revisit at a different way, because their level of exposure, the complexities of the issues get more and more different. For example, pornography for very young children is just talking about body safety, private parts, you know. But when they get older, it will become like, why do people actually create pornography? You know, sometimes a boyfriend or girlfriend might actually feel so trusting to each other that they don't mind taking pictures of their private part and send to each other. But is that a good thing to do? I think at 14, 15, this is a important conversation to have. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Makes good sense. Now, next question is this, and I think I'll pose it to Raphael. Sometimes the young people say that my values as a grandparent are outdated and irrelevant. I dare not talk to my grandchildren about what I really think about some of the sexuality trends today. What is your advice? And I think I'll throw in a question of mine, which is about how do you also align the attitudes towards sexuality, say, between the parents and the grandparents when you're talking to younger people? So, Raphael, over to you.
Okay, that's a very big question. Um, I feel like young people, if we kind of lead with this is what I want you to know, you better listen up. They tend not to be so open, right? I do find that young people like to be listened to. They like to be learned from, right? Because I think the expectation, especially in our Asian culture, is that older people must be listened to. We don't challenge them. So I think it might be refreshing if, say, an older person were to come to a younger person and say, "Hey, can you tell me about this trend? What do you know about it? I want to." You just act a bit like you don't know lah. Of course, you do your own research, right? So you can listen. Tell me more. And I think maybe starting from the place of what they do know could be a good lead in as to where are they at, and then if say you do share your perspective and they're like, oh, you're so outdated, so irrelevant, then maybe that might be another platform for conversation, right? Like what is it about what I'm sharing that you find is irrelevant or outdated? I also think that the value that the older generation bring is that they can attest to what are time tested and timeless values because they have really seen it. Oh, they have seen what endures and they have seen what are like trends, right? That kind of like passes away. And I think it's about kind of like getting to that place of like, if we approach with curiosity, maybe then younger people are more open to the wisdom that older generation can bring from what they have already seen. Yeah, I hope that speaks to the question. What's your question? Second one now. Second one sounds very complex.
Second one is about alignment between the parents and the grandparents when it comes to sexuality education.
Alignment. Wow. Honestly, I feel like the heart of the question depends on what is your existing relationship dynamics between your parents and you, right? Because everything is framed in that context. What has been the conversation like between topics that we find challenging, and then you have to go and speak to your parent about, hey, can you don't go and do this to my child or not? Right? Has that been have you had a short record of respect, or have you had a different history? And then kind of that brings to bear about this. But I think sometimes it might be just stating things a bit factually, like, hey, I would appreciate it if, this is what my family is going to do. This is what my family is practicing. I would appreciate it if you do this. Of course, this is the ideal world, huh? As you all know, no conversation in real life happens like that. So you got to contextualize it. But I would say really think about the existing relational dynamics and think about what is that one small thing maybe we can do differently now that this is an opportunity, right? Like, I must talk to my papa and mama about this, man. Then like you're like, right, what might be one way to go in and do one thing differently that through talking about sexuality, through alignment of values, it might set a new template for other things that you can start to talk about. Is what my view is.
Hey,
Can I
thanks.
weigh in
Carol, any?
also?
Yes,
Yeah,
Carol, please.
I find that sometimes when there are differences, having something objective, that means outside of both parties, something objective might be able to have a common ground for to widen the discussion. And so in this case, maybe what I would encourage us to think about is actually what is what is in the best interest of the child, what is most healthy. And I would encourage us to think about actually our body matters, and actually biology matters. So just because it seems outdated or irrelevant, I would come in with this posture of curiosity, like what is it outdated? You know, sometimes people want to be progressive, but progressive, is it really healthy? How do you even define progressive? What is it progressing towards? You know, is the end of that progression, is it really healthy? And why is it healthy? And start to have that common understanding, because I think whether is it parents or grandparents, they do want the best interest of the children. And so using that as a basis of like, okay, help me to understand how does this actually help my child? You know, is it really healthy in terms of how they see this, how they see themselves, for example? And perhaps that can then at least have a common ground first, you know, using how our body grows as a basis of discussion. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. This next question I think I'll pose to Carol. What about BGR? I believe it refers to boy-girl relationships. Should you stop your children from getting into BGR? What age is okay to get into BGR? Okay, so Carol, over to you.
Yeah, okay. I have a 24-year-old and a 21-year-old. So this has been a constant conversation from the time that they were in primary school. Because in secondary school, they do include dating and all this in the sexuality education curriculum. And so when I talk about it with my girls, I would first talk about actually what is the purpose of dating. So again, this is a values-based, even dating is a values-based consideration, you know. In my family, the way that we discuss it in my family is that dating must be purposeful. Dating has an end goal of actually checking out whether this person is suitable for marriage. And what is our definition of marriage? Marriage is something between a man and a woman, and it's meant to be lifelong. Okay, so we are checking out whether this person is somebody that I want to invest my time and my energy with for a very long time, you know, ideally the hope my whole life. If not, then it's not dating, it's just hanging out. So even things like that, I would talk to my children at primary school, and then we would have talk about, you know, what is the kind of person that you want to look for as your boyfriend, you know, in future. And then we talk about, oh, the different things that they look out for. But in order to even list that out, I encourage my girls to first think about themselves. They first need to understand themselves, right? Know what they want in life, know themselves well, and that is a process that will take time, right? And so actually the secondary school years is a great time for them to discover themselves first, right? Know about, you know, what are their interests, what are, and spend time discovering, exploring different things, not people, but different things first, understand the world a little bit more. Then they would know, okay, what is it that I want in my life? Then I would be able to find somebody who can complement it, who can complement me to do the things that are aligned to my values, aligned to, you know, what is beneficial. Because if they don't even know themselves and they just go by feelings, oh, this guy is very cute, and then and just go by that way, then maybe it's a little bit more dangerous. So it's a conversation that starts with actually, do we have opportunity to first discover about ourselves, about what we want, so that we don't just rely on somebody to lead a healthy life. We don't cling on to somebody else, and which is unhealthy. So it's not so much about what age, you know, at what age do you think your child would be able to discover about themselves? It will take a long time, you know. So my girls are 24 and 21. They always have this list of criteria in their phone. From time to time, we would review, you know, like, so they used to have a very long list. Then I look at the list and say, I think this one a bit hard off to find one person that can meet all these criteria, right? And then we will start to discuss like what are some of the non-negotiables and what are some of the things that are negotiable. So this become like a conversation, you know, like Raphael was saying, that we need to have like multiple conversation. When they are younger, it is more about envisioning with them. What should relationships be like? When roughly do you think you will be ready, or, you know, actually spend a lot more time discovering self. This is what I would encourage. So not a fixed number, right? But it's more about helping our young people to envision what their life could be, and not get tied down too early. Yeah.
Okay, I think we have time for just one last question and also a short answer. So the question is pretty long. I'll just read it out as it is. There are many young ladies who have tattoos and wear revealing outfits to show off their tattoos nowadays. I'm fine with them wanting to show off, but some really wear too little. I wonder if I should talk to my boys about it or wait until they ask. Also, if we happen to find ourselves in front of a lady showing too much on public transport, should I usher my boys away? So I think I'll direct it to Raphael. I think maybe also to generalize it a bit to say that, well, what if you do encounter, let's say, a situation where you do see people perhaps wearing a little bit too revealing, and perhaps if your children are seeing something like that, what do you do?
Hmm. I have two boys, by the way, so I will soon have to face this question. But I think from my work in sexual violence, I do want to take the approach of we are responsible for our own reactions, no matter what we encounter, what comes in front of us. Lah. So I think if they're younger, if the judgment call as a parent is this is not age appropriate for them to look at, then that is the reason that we might bring them away, right? We might talk to them about, we want to the way we dress, say something's very important about us. And as a guy, this is also something we really be paying attention to. But not so we're not trying to blame whoever is that they saw, right? But also boys, I think I wouldn't want to raise them as like, oh, because I have these desires, so women are responsible for my not making me last. I think that's definitely not the kind of perspective I want to take. I think when we take the boys will be boys perspective, when I see an attractive woman, a thinly clad woman pass in front of me, and I have this uncontrollable desire, it's her fault. I think that does boys a huge disservice. We portray boys and men to be beasts with uncontrollable lust and almost like they're not in control of themselves. So I would want to talk to them about, say, like self-control and what are sexual desires for. When you have a reaction, when you have an erection to something that you see, sometimes it's a full bladder, lah. But sometimes it's because you have sexual, desire come up, and how do you make sense of that? I mean, that's a succinct as answer I can give in a short amount of time. But that's the kind of approach that I would like to take with boys.
Okay, Carol, any quick thoughts on this one?
I think it's also about where we pay our attention to, and if they find that they are drawn to certain things, and if they already know that, hey, maybe my eyes belong to me, I don't need to focus on that. Some of the things that we talk about in the curriculum by Defend Young Minds is that we can actually decide to look away, right? If we first need to know what is healthy and not healthy for us, and then we can reject certain things that we know that is not healthy for us. Yeah. So I think being able to bounce our eyes, having that control, but it's difficult for young people, right? To be able to like, no, I really want to look at this, but I know that this is not really good. And then I can focus my attention on something else. Actually, the more we do this kind of thing, the more we can strengthen the prefrontal cortex, the thinking part. It's like we do the hard stuff, it's like going to the gym and do hard stuff, and you can train up the brain actually. Yeah. So yeah.
Okay, Raphael, one last quick thought from you.
Yeah, I do want to weigh in and talk about. I think we do want to portray, like what Carol says, our bodies and sexuality as something beautiful. It is powerful, therefore we need boundaries to enjoy it properly. But we do want to talk about it as, hey, if as a guy you see an attractive woman or a girl and you feel sexual arousal, that is beautiful because that's the way your body is designed. How then can you experience this in a way that really would bear good fruit? And that's where the boundaries come in. So I think it's helpful that we kind of move in frame it that way as opposed to, oh, your sexual desires are this like sneaky, uncontrollable beast you must always control and be suspicious of. I don't genuinely find that's helpful. I think portraying it as something wonderful is usually a really good start. That's what I want to get.
Yeah, for the younger children, if I could jump in like one final thought. For the younger children, if they feel something in their body, I would, tell them that, hey, actually that means your reproductive system is working very well. But certain feelings is meant to be actually part of the package of sex. And that's why we need to talk about what sex is and how it can be beautiful in the context of marriage. I think that's where the values come in. And then want to explain, why is it that it should be within that boundary, as what Raphael was saying, that it can be beautiful and it's very powerful. The passion and romantic, all those feelings are good, but in the context of marriage or based on your values. Yeah, I just wanted to add that.
Okay, thank you so much. And with that, let me just share our next webinar. So our next webinar will be taking place on 24th June, 8 to 9 p.m. If you are interested, please scan the QR code. The topic will be encouraging a family-centric view of online games. Once again, if you're interested to register, please scan the QR code that you can see on your screen. And if you would like to follow our work on Grander Together, please feel free to scan the QR code in the next slide over here. Scan the QR code, you can find links to our YouTube channel, our WhatsApp channel, our Telegram channel, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and so on and so forth. Please feel free to follow us, like us, subscribe, and if you would like to also contribute to perhaps future webinars, feel free to fill up the feedback form that will appear on your screen after you sign up. That will help us to serve you better and talk about topics that you really care about. And if there's any other topic that you'd like to suggest to us, please feel free to fill up the feedback form as well. And that will recommend to us a topic that perhaps we could cover in a future Apparently webinar. So you've been a great audience. Thank you for participating so actively. Thank you very much once again, and good night.